Welcome, welcome. My name is Melissa Deely, and I'm very honored to be standing in for Dr. Melissa Balazan this evening. She is traveling and asked me to come on and do the show this evening, and I'm excited to be here. Tonight, we're going to be talking about, are your trash cans overflowing? And no, I'm not talking about the ones that you put out on the street. I'm talking about the ones inside your body, your liver and your kidneys. But before we dive into that, I just want to share a little bit of my story and who I am, since I'm new to this and you have likely never met me before. So I'm coming to you from Whistler, British Columbia, Canada. And I am an integrative health practitioner and registered health coach. I've also recently completed my NLP training, my timeline therapy training, as well as hypnotherapy. So I have lots of modalities for working with people on their health journey, from both working with the physical body as well as the mental and emotional bodies. But I wasn't always in health and wellness. And in fact, this journey started just over 7 years ago. I was previously in the corporate world. And I had a job with the same company for 24 years, which I loved most of the time, had it ups and downs, but loved it most of the time. And then one day, big fish bought little fish, and I was given an hour to clear out my desk and no word of thanks. And in that moment, I knew three things. I knew that I was never going to work for someone else again. I knew that whatever I did next was going to have to be more of service to humanity and the planet, and that I had no idea what I was going to do next, but I was open to being guided. And guided I was. Later that year, I came across a company that specialized in supplementation for the brain. And I thought, well, that's interesting because I know I use my brain 24/7, and no one has ever told me that my brain needs different nutrition to the rest of my body, or that I could be doing more to support my brain by ensuring that I was getting this nutrition. And I knew that there was near epidemic levels of Alzheimer's and dementia over here. And I also knew that I had a grandmother over here who was 99 years old, still living at home by herself, fully cognitively functioning. And it made me think, well, I really want to be on her path, my grandmother's path, and not the Alzheimer's and dementia path. And I knew that I had good genetics, obviously, but I questioned, was that enough? And I started thinking about her life compared to my life. And she was born in little old Christchurch, New Zealand, in the bottom corner of the world in 1916, before the advent of all the chemical toxins that we've had introduced into our world since World War II, growing their own food on their property, et cetera, et cetera. And I was raised in Tokyo, Japan, great lifestyle, but at the height of manufacturing plants spewing out toxins without any care for how that was impacting human health. And so I realized that I was way more toxic than my grandmother. And if I wanted to follow her path, I needed to do something about that, because here I am definitely behind the eight ball, so to speak. And so I started learning about nutrition for the brain, but also about toxicity and how that impacts our health, the health of our body, and our brain. And very shortly after that, my oldest daughter got a concussion in her first grade 12 soccer game of the season. And she had just started using this brain supplementation and saying that it was helping her pay attention and focus in her classes in the afternoon at school. And because I wasn't working, and because she didn't have the cognitive ability to go to appointments with practitioners, listen to them talk about her concussion and what she needed to be doing and not doing, and then come home and tell me so that I could support her until her next appointment, I went with her. And for my own learning, because now I'm interested in the brain, right? So I was helping guide her on her recovery from her concussion. And 2 months later, I was driving to Vancouver and I get a phone call from the high school. And they're calling to ask me to go and pick up my younger daughter because she has a suspected concussion from grade 8 gym class, no less. And I literally looked out the windshield across the horizon, driving next to the ocean, and went, really? This is how you show me my path? please stop taking out my children. So now I had two very different concussions that I was dealing with in the house, going to both sets of appointments. And I realized, what do other people do that don't conveniently have a mom that isn't working to take them to their appointments and guide them on their healing journey between the appointments and hold them accountable and help them remember what they're supposed to be doing, etc. Because I learned that the body doesn't heal in a stress state. It only heals when we're in our rest and digest state, when we're relaxed. And the problem is when we're trying to figure it all out for ourselves, we are not in that relaxed state. But when we're guided on our healing journey, we can relax into the process knowing we're supported. And that's when true healing can happen. And so I realized there was this gap in the market for many people. And I was, grateful to be able to support my kids in their healing journey. And thankfully, they've both fully recovered. There is a happy ending to the story. But shortly thereafter, because I live in a small town, people started asking me, can you help me because my husband got a concussion, or I have an employee with a concussion. How do I bring them back to work? I have a son that had a concussion. And not long after that, I was invited to work at a holistic clinic that was opening in town to support the many people that we have with concussions here. And we have many excellent practitioners, but no one was talking about concussions from the nutritional standpoint, except me at that time. But I couldn't work at the clinic because I couldn't get insurance, liability insurance, because the insurance companies didn't want to touch me because I didn't have a certification. My own knowledge, my own research, my own working with my kids for the last year was not enough in their eyes. And so I knew I needed to go back to school. But I didn't really know what I needed to do, although life coach had been floating around in the back of my head ever since I've been let go. And so I called a friend who was a life coach and is a life coach to this day. And I said, hey, where did you do your life coaching certification? Because I would like to go and get my certification. I'd like to do it at a reputable school, not a fly by your seat of your pants, become a life coach in a weekend type course. And he just said to me, you don't need to be a life coach. You need to be a health coach. And that's when I went, what? What's that? I'd never even heard that term. And this was 2017 at this point, early 2017. And so I started Googling because that landed. Life coach had never landed, but health coach in that moment landed. And I was like, yeah, that sounds like what I want to be doing. And I started looking at health coaching schools, found one that really aligned with what I wanted. And I jumped in, and they had a cohort starting within 10 days. And from that moment, I have never looked back. And it was really interesting because as I dove into that, I started having more ahas along the lines of, how come I never knew that about my own body? How come no one ever told me that? Wow, self-care, I get to look after myself first? What? And I realized if I didn't know this because I'd been busy being a mom and a wife and, working my corporate job 40, 60 hours a week, if I hadn't had time to learn all of this, there's probably millions of other people out there that hadn't had time to learn all of it either. And so fast forward to now, that's one of my things that I'm really passionate about is educating people in their health in small bite-sized pieces that we can tackle because we're all busy. But when we know better, we do better, right? So there were so many little things that I learned. I was like, wow, if I'd known that, I would have done that. And since then, I have been changing my habits and upping my health as a result of all of this. I didn't just go and do it all at once. I just did it step by step by step. And so now I've actually created a podcast called Don't Wait for Your Wake Up Call. You can check that out on your favorite podcast app, or you can go to my website, which is yourguidedhealthjourney.com, and you will find it there. And that is all about health education. I do 2 solo episodes a month. I have guests on the alternate episodes. And then 3 times a week, I do little mini health hacks, right? So they're, 1, 2, 3 minutes long, just to give you actionable tips, steps, or information around your health that will allow you to step up your game when it comes to your health. So, from my health coaching certification, I was then introduced to Dr. Stephen Cabral of the Integrative Health Practitioner Organization. And when I saw the work that he was doing with functional medicine labs that get mailed to your home, that allow us to see what's going on inside the body in terms of imbalances, and then being able to support the body in coming back into balance, at which point it will heal itself, because that's what our body is designed to do. I knew that was the next step that I wanted to take, because when we have personalized health like that and we can truly know what's going on, we can stop guessing and we can help the body come back into balance. And as I said, it will heal. So that was the next step that I took and became an integrative health practitioner. And I absolutely love this work. And I felt like when I came across Dr. Cabral that he was my brother from another mother, so to speak, because he was talking about overflowing rain barrels. And I had been talking about overflowing trash cans from all of my work and learning about toxins and our toxic load and what that is doing to our health. And so that's what I want to share with you today, because this message is really important. I truly believe that if we can all bring our toxic load down, we would alleviate the chronic illness that we have in the world today. And so I'm going to share my screen with you just to show you how our health has changed over the last century and a bit, because it's really quite shocking. And I'm going to make this big screen for you so you can see it. There we go. So let's talk about obesity. And this is based on North American stats. So back in the 19th century, obesity was at 1.2% of the population. And obesity isn't just overweight. Obesity is grossly overweight, where we have significant health conditions coming along with it that we need to be addressing. And it's hard to address them when we have those weight issues going on. However, we absolutely can when we find the right practitioner that can show us how to do it. So only 1.2% back in the 19th century. And by 1980, we were at 13 to 14%. And here's something really interesting. Our governments at this point were starting to see the increase in rates of obesity and heart disease, et cetera. And so they, came together, many of the governments of the English-speaking world, saying, okay, what are we going to do? We need to do something in order to stem this rise in obesity, heart disease, type 2 diabetes. What can we do? That is when they introduced the concept of low fat, no fat. And boy, has that backfired on us. It was based on some really flawed logic. Our bodies are incredible, and they are definitely not simple. And their flawed logic was that if we don't want to be fat, we shouldn't eat fat. And from that came the no fat, low fat idea that if you don't want to be fat, you got to buy no fat, low fat, right? Now, here's the problem. First of all, our brain is made up of fat and water, largely those two, okay? So it needs fat, but what it needs is good quality fat. In our diet, we need to be having a little bit of protein at every meal, a little bit of carbs at every meal, and a little bit of fat at every meal, but again, good quality fat, because that fat is actually not only fueling the body, fueling the brain, but also helping with slowing down digestion so that we can feel satiated for longer so we don't end up eating as much. So what happened when we took the low fat, no fat road is that initially, when the fat was removed from the foods, it tasted awful. I'm sure you've all heard healthy foods taste like cardboard. Well, for a time, that's where that came from. So what did the food industry do? Well, they wanted it to taste better so people would buy more. So they added sugar. So all of a sudden now we've got low fat, no fat, but it's really high in sugar. And this is the problem with that flawed logic, because you can see what has happened here is our rate of increase actually started to grow even faster when it came to type 2 diabetes and obesity after implementing the low fat, no fat. And it's still around today, 40 years later. You can go into any supermarket and you can find skim milk, you can find low fat, no fat yogurt, you can find so many products that say no, low fat, no fat, etc. But look again at the label and see how much sugar is included in them. So that was a huge mistake that we made. And I was indoctrinated into it as well. And so when I became a health coach and I started learning all of this, and I realized I actually don't want to be eating low fat, no fat. I remember standing in the supermarket reaching for the whole milk instead of the skim milk, and my brain going, what are you doing? And I'm like, no, I get the science behind this. This is what I need to be buying now. And it was just interesting that my brain responded that way, even though I knew the science, that sometimes our habits are so ingrained that our brain will question us on what we're doing. So anyway, 13 to 14% rate of obesity back in 1980. By the turn of the century, that had more than doubled to 30.5%. And in the last 20 years, that has gone up another 12%. And now we're sitting at 42.4% of the population is struggling with obesity and the health conditions that will stem from that. If we then look at type 2 diabetes, we had back in the 19th century, diabetes of any type was rare. In 1935, 0.37% diabetes prevalence in the population. By 1960, that was a 2.5-fold increase to 0.91%. By 1991, in just 30 years, that was an 8-fold increase to 2.97%. And then by 2015, it was at 9.4%. A 25-fold increase in 80 years. And type 2 diabetes is definitely a lifestyle chronic illness, in that when we change the lifestyle of the people with that diagnosis, we can, over time, remove that diagnosis entirely. We have a timeline for heart disease too. So in the 19th century, there were only 8 worldwide reports of heart attacks. In 1912, John Herrick published the first known case in the US. By the 1930s, coronary heart disease, which was virtually unknown 30 years earlier, became the leading cause of death. And by 2010, it's 32% of deaths, 1 in 3. And cancer deaths. So in 1811, 0.5% of deaths in Boston were due to cancer, and basically 1 in 188 deaths. By 1900, it became 1 in 17 deaths. And by 2010, it was at 1 in 3 deaths are due to cancer. So what is causing this decline in our health over this time, at a time when we have so many advances in our healthcare? And part of the problem, a big part of the problem, is the introduction of the toxins that we have had in the last century, and many of which have been introduced since World War II, but there was still toxins in our environment before that. But 144,000 man-made chemicals have been introduced in North America since World War II. In Europe, they're much more stringent, and that number is only 8,000. Now, what are those toxins doing to our body? Our human body doesn't evolve that rapidly. And as a result, our body is having to cope with this burden of toxins that it was never designed to have to deal with. And our liver is absolutely overburdened. And I'm going to share again with you and show you many of the things that our poor liver is having to cope with on a daily basis. And it's filling up your trash cans. So alcohol intake, I think most people know that, but let's look at all these other things. Excessive workload, smoking, prescription and over-the-counter medicines all have to be detoxed out of the body by the liver. And so here we're talking, Advil, Tylenol, and acids, etc., etc., etc. Infections and illness, whether acute or chronic, the liver has to work harder doing those to get that out of the body. We've got stress, both psychological and emotional. And then, of course, the excessive workload that I've already mentioned, well, that causes stress too. Processed foods, sugar, white flour products are really tough on the liver. We also have environmental toxins, so heavy metals and pesticides that the liver has to process. Allergies and food intolerances cause more work for the liver to have to deal with. Poor nutrition and poor eating habits, so eating on the run, not digesting our meals well enough, just the way we're eating is impacting the liver's ability to do its job. Coffee and energy drinks are a problem as well. On top of that, we have here soils deficient in key detox minerals. And that too is a huge factor, because ever since the advent of the Industrial Revolution, we have been taking from the soil, and in order to try and feed the planet and make a profit in the food industry, et cetera, et cetera. And we are not allowing the soil to regenerate the nutrients. And as a result, the soil deficiency levels in the last 50 to 100 years have significantly increased. We're not getting the vitamins and minerals in our food that we once got. And as an example, you would have to eat 9 oranges in one sitting today in order to get the nutrient value from this one orange that my grandmother got back in the 1930s. Isn't that crazy? Now, who would eat 9 oranges in one sitting? You couldn't, because it would just be too much fiber, right? And so our poor body isn't getting what it needs to get, particularly for the liver to do its job. You see, the liver detoxes in 2 phases, phase 1 and phase 2. And phase 2 is where it needs really specific nutrients in order to convert those toxins to being water soluble, so that we can excrete them from our body through our urine, through our bowels, through our breath, through our skin. And if it can't do that because it's not getting the nutrients needed to complete that phase of detoxification, guess what? Those toxins stay in our body. And the liver then has to try to keep them out of our bloodstream. Our liver cleanses our blood every 6 minutes. It works tirelessly for your good health. And it doesn't want the toxins to get into the bloodstream, because as soon as they get into the bloodstream, then they can have the risk of getting up into the brain and getting through the blood-brain barrier and going all through our body. So the liver, if it can't convert them to being water soluble to excrete them, it will store them in our fat tissue, our adipose tissue. And women, listen up, because where do we have a lot of fat tissue? I did already say the brain, but our breasts. And so our breasts can become quite toxic as a result of the body not being able to remove the toxins. But we make it worse ourselves, and we can do something about this, something you can learn tonight and change. In that, society and marketing companies have told us that we all have to wear bras. And that stops us from having sagging breasts when we're older, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I realize if you're doing a workout, you might want to wear a bra for support and for comfort. But do you have to wear a bra all day long? You absolutely do not. And in fact, you don't want to, because tight bras with underwires, what do? They trap those toxins in our breast tissue. When our breasts are free to move as we move our body and jiggle, it allows the toxins to actually move through the fat tissue and into our lymphatic system, which starts here under our left arm. But when we wear a tight bra, we're trapping those toxins into the fat tissue in our breasts for longer than we want to. And guess what? This is a known cause of breast cancer. So I don't wear a bra very often. Yes, I will put a bra on when I'm doing a cardio workout. I live in Canada. I wear sweaters for a good chunk of the year. So people don't know that I'm not wearing bras, except that I talk about it all the time. So people probably do. And you know what? I don't care, because I would rather know that my toxins are moving through and out of my body rather than getting trapped in my breasts. And so think about where you don't need to be wearing a bra. Let your girls go free and see how you enjoy that. You can wear a camisole instead. You can wear a looser fitting bra too. Just make sure it's not super tight unless you truly need it for support because of a workout. So that's one thing that we women have to deal with. Another thing that happens for many women is that before we leave the house, we have put on over 200 toxins onto our skin. And when we put them onto our skin, they get into our bloodstream in 26 seconds. And we don't even have the liver to try and filter them. It's straight into our bloodstream and moving through our body and potentially into our brain if they cross the blood-brain barrier. So here are some examples of the many toxins in personal care products that women use on a regular basis. And you may not be aware of this because, again, with the 144,000 man-made chemicals allowed in North America, the companies are not under stringent guidelines to prove that anything is safe before they put it on the shelves for you to buy. It's up to the consumer to determine if something is safe or not safe and do their own research. And that can be really hard to do. But I want to let you know this because, again, when we know better, we do better. I didn't know all of this when I was in the corporate world, but I know it now. And when I started learning this, I started changing my habits. As I finished up either personal care products or cleaning products in our house, etc., I started changing them out for products that were toxin free. And fortunately, in the last 10 years, there's been many, many companies introducing toxin free products. So for personal care products and cleaning products, my favorites are Young Living, doTERRA. I buy from Melaleuca. I buy from Arbonne. I know Beauty Counter. I haven't ever bought from them, but I understand that they also have toxin-free makeup, etc. And what I have actually done is on my website at yourguidedhealthjourney.com, I have a tab that says resources. And under that is a link that says my recommendations. And you can go there and find all of my recommendations for products that are non-toxic, from, dryer balls and the laundry detergent that I use to my linen, the bed that I purchased when I bought a new bed recently, and I didn't want it to be covered in flame retardant because guess what? I sleep on that 8 hours a night, every single night. And to a recipe for making your own deodorant, which is what I choose to do because it's super easy to make. I know exactly what's in it. And no, it doesn't come in a stick applicator, but I don't really care. I can just, put some on my fingers and rub it under my arms and then wash my hands. And it works wonderfully. And I'm very happy knowing that it's not toxic. So all of that information is there for you if that is helpful to you. And I want to dive into, so now you know that we live in a toxic world, and I'm not sharing this information with you to be scary or, make you frightened, et cetera, et cetera. I really just want to educate and empower you. And of course, I'm not going to just leave you there and not tell you what you can do about it. I want to show you that there are more steps that you can take. I also want to share with you, I recently watched a movie called Dark Waters, and I don't know if you've seen that or not, but it's about the lawyer who was suing DuPont for the toxic sludge that they were contaminating the waters of West Virginia with in making Teflon. And they knew it and they hid it for 50 years. And the lawyer was alerted to this by a farmer who was noticing that his cows were dying and employees were dying. They were getting cancer, all sorts of things. And it took him 16 years to win the first case. And then there was many, many more cases. But the reality is that unfortunately in our world, in North America in particular, the almighty dollar rules. And so DuPont they knew what was happening and they didn't want to stop making Teflon and stop, dumping the sludge that was toxic because they were making so much money from the sales of the Teflon. And it reminded me of another movie, Erin Brockovich, which was also about poisoned water, etc. Unfortunately, these things are happening in our world today. And it might be nice to think that our government will look after us and our medical system will look after, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't have to worry about my health. And if I get sick, I'll just go to the doctor and they'll make me better. That's not our reality today. Our reality today is that your health is your responsibility. And you have to be an advocate for yourself. And it is your greatest asset. Your body is your greatest asset. And when you recognize that and treat it like any of your other assets, that's when you can put yourself onto the path of my grandmother and change your health outcomes. And to me, that's really empowering. So think about it. If you own a house, that's probably your biggest asset, right? But when you moved in, you were so happy to move in and it's your home. Did you just stop looking after it? Or have you been taking out the trash ever since and vacuuming and sweeping and cleaning and renovating and repairing and fixing as needed? You've been doing all of that for your house, right? And what about your car? Maybe you don't own a house, but you own a car. Again, buy the car. Even if it's secondhand, it's your car. You're super proud of it. And what do? Well, you keep it clean, you wash it, you take it for services, oil changes so that it will keep running, right? You don't let it die and then deal with it. You service it in order to have that maintenance so it keeps working. Well, we can do the same for our body. It's just so many of us have been programmed. We don't have to worry about our health because if we get sick, we go to the doctor and they'll make us better. That's a lot of responsibility to put on another person. It is not their responsibility to make you better. It is your responsibility to look after your health so that ultimately, maybe you don't even need to go to the doctor. That's what I try to do. And in fact, in ancient China and ancient India, they didn't pay their doctors if their villagers got sick. And I really love that because it meant the doctors were very proactive in teaching their villagers how to be proactive in their health. And that's what's missing today, that educational piece, which is a gap that I am trying to fill. So anyway, back to what can you do about this toxic load? Well, we live in a world where we can't avoid it. We can't ignore it, but we can choose to assist our body in getting the toxins out. And you can do that with a functional medicine detox. And here's the thing, they still detox in India through Ayurvedic medicine. They still detox in Latin American cultures. They still detox in Asian cultures. And guess where all the chronic illness is in the world? It's not in those areas because detoxing truly works. What happens in the Western world is we're told, well, you have a shower or a bath and you wash your outer body and that's enough for good health and good hygiene. And it's not. We're completely ignoring our inner body. And here's the thing. Hippocrates said about 2,000 years ago that all disease starts in the gut. And modern science has only just come around to agreeing with that recently. So we have to look after our gut because 70% of our immune system is housed in our gut. So if we want to be healthy, we need a strong immune system. And to have a strong immune system, we have to have a healthy gut. So looking after it is absolutely critical. So when we detox, what we are doing is resetting the body. We are literally clearing out the toxins and even more than that. And the functional medicine detox program that I offer, that Dr. Melissa Balasan has actually recently done, she did a great job on it. She enjoyed it and she enjoyed the benefits of it. You know, is anyone can say, oh, please, let me do a detox? I do actually have people doing that, but not everyone. But what I do is I make it really easy by guiding you through it, giving you recipes, supporting you through an app where you can get your questions answered. Because when you can get your questions answered, that's what leads to success. It's That's when you can talk back to your mind. It's when you don't get your questions answered that your brain starts playing games with you, going, this is weird. Why are you cooking this meal? Why aren't you eating today? What are you doing? These are new habits. Do you even know what you're doing? This feels hard. I'm hungry. Maybe you should just quit and go back over here in our comfort zone where I know I can keep you safe. And that's when we fall off. But when we can instead talk back to our brain and go, I do know what I'm doing, and I do know how to get my questions answered because I can just message Melissa. And I would like you to bear with me while I bring us both to a new place of better health over here. That's when we can be successful in any program that we start. So this program it's a 3-week program is what I run for people. And so instead of doing like a 7-day water fast all in one, which nobody really wants to do, it's very hard. It should be done under the guidelines of a medical doctor. And you can't work through that because honestly, by the end of day 3, you're too exhausted and you would need to take a vacation to do your 7-day water fast. So what we do is we spread it out over 3 weeks so that it's doable for people to do in their everyday life. And we have 2.5 days of fasting at the beginning. What you are getting in your fast, though, is a shake powder created by a naturopathic doctor, Dr. Stephen Cabral, my mentor, who talked about overflowing rain barrels, that includes all the vitamins and minerals that your body needs in order to thrive, detox formula, and a little bit of protein. And you have a very diluted version of that on your fasting days, and you sip it slowly so that your body can just naturally absorb all of that goodness to give you what you need to still be totally fine and functioning on your fasting days, but without turning on digestion. And that is the key. The body can only be in deep cleaning mode or autophagy when digestion is turned off. Now stop and think about that for a minute. How often do you let your body get out of digestion? Most meals take 2 to 3 hours to digest. And through COVID, we've all been at home and the refrigerator is just over there. And you finish one meal, and perhaps within 2 to 3 hours, you're at the fridge putting something else in your mouth and turning digestion on again. And we do that all day long. And the body's just going from digestion to digestion to digestion with no chance to get any deep cleaning done in between. And so this program is putting our body into this deep cleaning state. And when we're in it for 12 hours, autophagy starts to kick in, and then 24 hours, the toxins are coming out, and now we're starting to clear up dead cells and damaged cells in the body and get rid of them. And at 48 hours, the human growth hormone kicks in, and that starts to produce new cells, bringing us new energy. And so this is a really powerful program for helping our body heal. And at the same time, we are also giving the body Ayurvedic herbs and functional medicine herbs to support the liver and kidneys in phase 2 of detoxification, so we can actually get those toxins out of the body. So important. Days 3 to 7, you continue with the shakes, but you do 2 scoops in the morning and 2 scoops in the afternoon, and you have a vegan lunch, and you have dinner that you can add animal protein if you choose. You do not have to. And again, I provide all the recipes for you that are super delicious, that will have you eating foods that are really easy to digest and that are not the common trigger foods. So what we're doing is lowering the stress on your whole digestive system so it can heal. Remember, I said at the very beginning that the body doesn't heal in a stress state. That's why we need to be lowering the stress. So this program, as I said, was created by Dr. Stephen Cabral, and he's a naturopathic doctor. He's also studied Ayurvedic medicine. He studied Chinese traditional medicine. He studied orthomolecular medicine and bioregulatory medicine. And he did all of that in an effort to heal himself from 3 autoimmune diseases that he was diagnosed with at 17, when he couldn't even get out of bed, and Western medicine told him, well, sorry, there's nothing we can do for you. And he refused to take on that diagnosis after having a little pity party, and decided that he was going to study all the medicines of the world until he found the one that would heal him. And he wanted to find the best medicine in the world. And what he discovered was there isn't one best medicine in the world, but you can take pieces of each of them in order to find healing modalities that will bring the body back into balance and allow it to heal itself. So today he's over 40. He's absolutely thriving. It took him about 10 years to heal himself from those 3 autoimmune diseases, and now he has none. And he's sharing his brilliance with the world. He had a wait list of a year long for clients, and he felt, well, that's not fair, making people wait a whole year to see me. I can't clone myself, but what I can do is train other people to do what I do. And that's exactly what he did when he created the Integrative Health Practitioner Program. And that's the training that I have completed. And so now I offer his programs along with many other integrative health practitioners so that we can share this with the world and truly make a difference. And that is my mission, is to create a healthier global community. And we can all do this together. It's just sharing the message and understanding the power of detoxing and understanding the power of listening to our body, the symptoms that our body gives us. We often, through society, are taught to ignore our symptoms, to be tough, to suck it up, to keep pushing through, right? We've all heard that. And that's the worst thing that we can actually do, because our symptoms are our body's way of talking to us and asking us to do something differently. They're not to be ignored. And here's the reality, that our body initially will whisper to us gently in the touch of a feather. And if we ignore it, it might come along and thump us with a brick. And if we still ignore it, watch out, because it might come and whack you with a wrecking ball. So I invite you to pay attention to your symptoms. Don't write them off. Don't ignore them. They're not aging. They're not seasonal allergies. And they're not just your genes. They're your body asking you to do something differently. And in many cases, you have those symptoms because your toxic load is increasing and getting higher with each year that you are on this planet. So I have a toxic load quiz. You can go ahead and take this quiz to see what your toxic load score is. And it may be a little bit of an aha for you, because it brings to the forefront for you these symptoms that you may have been ignoring. And if your score is high, don't worry about it, because we can bring that score down. And what's important is that you're here, you're getting this message, you're taking the quiz, and you now know there is something that you can do about it. The message that I would love for everyone to take away from this session this evening is simply that you are empowered in your health. You are your own best doctor. You've lived in your body your entire life. And when you have the awareness to listen to your symptoms and then don't wait, but seek support from people that can help you understand the root causes of what's going on for you, then you can bring your body back into balance really quickly, right? If it's just a little bit out of balance, we can come back into balance quickly. If it's way out of balance, yeah, it's going to take a lot longer. But here's the thing too, that whatever symptoms you have or whatever diagnoses you might have received, you didn't go to bed perfectly healthy the night before and just wake up with them the next day. They've been brewing in your body for weeks, months, sometimes years, with you ignoring them. And so it's taken you time to get where you're at today in your health journey, and it's going to take time for you to regain your health. But I promise it will take less time for you to regain your health than it's taken you to get here. Because the wonderful thing about the human body is that it loves to heal, and when you create the environment for it to heal, it starts healing really quickly. And in fact, every single client I've ever taken through my 21-day detox has had incredible health benefits as a result in just 3 weeks, right? More mental clarity, no brain fog, lowered inflammation, which means the aches and pains have gone away. There's weight loss, because guess what? Those toxins actually weigh something. People are sleeping better because the body detoxes naturally overnight, but when it's bogged down and can't do that, or you've gone to bed having just eaten, it's still digesting, that's putting so much pressure on the body to be able to detox overnight. It's not working well. And when we start to support the liver and kidneys, and we change the times that we're eating, and we're making sure the body's having a good amount of time to detox overnight, we sleep better because the body's not struggling. So then you wake up feeling rested, feeling energetic. I have so many people on this program discover that the coffee, the very thing that they thought was giving them energy and they were drinking for energy, was actually draining their energy, because coffee has an 8-hour half-life. And so if they were waking up and having coffee at 8 a.m. to kickstart their day, at 4 p.m., 8 hours later, they still have half of that running around in their veins. And 8 hours later, again at midnight, they still have half of that. And that's if they've had just one cup of coffee, right? So we get into these habits and we get into these cycles. And if you're someone that struggles with sleep, then you might want to consider where you're at with detoxing and what's going on with your coffee. And let's change up some habits to improve your sleep, regain your energy so that you can wake up every day feeling energized, excited to go about your day. We don't have to feel worse as we get older. That is a misnomer. I'm 53. I wake up with energy every day. I feel better than I did in my 30s because I have been putting into action what I've learned for the last 7 years and what I teach other people to do now. And it works. And I am on my grandmother's path. And I hope you will join me, because there's absolutely no reason why we can't live long, productive, joyous lives when we take care of our greatest asset. Unfortunately, in North America, the average person is spending 10 years in a nursing home at the end of their life. That is not quality life. So if you're hearing this message today, know that you have the power to change that outcome for yourself. Start looking after your greatest asset now so that you can live right to the end, live fully, as opposed to dying slowly in a nursing home. So thank you so, so much for joining me here tonight. I really hope that you have enjoyed this presentation. I'm going to share my screen one more time so that you can see the link to my toxic load quiz. It's a bit.ly. I will just say it out loud for anybody that isn't watching but listening. So it's just https://bit.ly/my toxic load. So go ahead and do that quiz, find out what your score is, and from there you're invited to book a call with me to further discuss what your results mean, how they may be impacting your health today, and learn what you can do to take proactive action in your health starting tomorrow so that you can live that long, full, joyful, productive life.